Thank you everybody for coming. Our next speaker is Laura Eisenhower. Laura Eisenhower is a global alchemist, international speaker, and intuitive astrologist. Laura is the great-granddaughter of Priestess Eisenhower, and she's President Eisenhower. She is a priestess, isn't she, of President Eisenhower. And she is considered by many to be the leading researcher on exopolitics and galactic history.
Hello, everybody. It is just so amazing to gather here in person. It feels like it's been such a long time, and it's so amazing to see so many familiar faces. And I know you saw that the name of this lecture is about Ascension and Galactic Zodiac. So I'm going to obviously touch upon that and give a few little teasers about what I'm going to be talking about in the workshop, which is going to go way more in depth. That has to do with DNA and this great awakening and just kind of like the whole kind of like body of work that I've been doing and research that I've been doing. But it's always interesting to hear my bio read, because when I heard the term global alchemist, that was just something I came up with because that's what it felt like I was doing. That's what it feels like we're all doing, even if we don't realize it. And I kind of joke redundantly that it's not the kind of thing that you'll get from a guidance counselor. Your parents aren't going to help encourage you to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe you're a global alchemist, Is that what you want to be when you grow up? No, you only are given like a limited amount of options. And the only reason I say that is because we clearly are turning the lead of this human experience into gold, and there's cosmic and earthly events that really, really hit that point home. And I'm going to share that and what some of these astrological alignments are, and the fact that we're really in like just a peak time of this greater alchemical shift, which is very initiatory. And so with this initiation, of course, all these tactics to turn us in the other direction so that we keep looping in this time loop. So we keep staying sort of like a food source, and we keep repeating history, but through a different sort of expression of the same sort of agenda, but masked in a different sort of version. So it kind of fools us, thinking like, oh no, this isn't like the Nazis. No, this is like, oh my God, I'm woke kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And no matter what our differences are, no matter what side a person feels more an affinity to, it doesn't mean that they're totally in that indoctrination or program, because a lot of the things that mean a lot to us have been weaponized. And so it's easy to kind of get caught maybe in a narrative and then realize, oh, wait a second, there's a catch here. But we can be sovereign and still care about the same things that they're choosing to kind of use against us to divide and conquer us. So it's really important that we don't allow that to happen, no matter what our differences are, no matter what side we stand on. Based in our affinity. I mean, diversity is such a gift. Diversity and harmony to me is true oneness, and our differences are a total blessing. So I never have this sort of like right or wrong approach, or like, that's a bad idea or this is a good idea. But I always like to just be a resource of information to just kind of call something out that might just like require a little bit more awareness for a person to know that is being kept in secrecy. That they won't tell you, and so much is hidden. So I shine a lot of light on what took place in Eisenhower's administration, a lot of the disinformation, a lot of the facades, a lot of the continued facades ever since, Paperclip and Mockingbird and all these different MK Ultra projects that came into the United States and infiltrated pretty much all the corporations and most power structures and governments and Hollywood industry, medical industry, school systems, and pretty much everything under the sun. And so we kind of want to take the blessings of what we gain from the system, but remove ourselves so that we can begin to work together and utilize our resources, our skills, and our talents and abilities, so we no longer have to compromise ourselves and answer to a tyrannical authority that acts like it actually cares about us. So anyway, that was kind of a big mouthful. I haven't even gotten through the first slide, and I tend to do that. So, and I only have an hour today, but yeah, this is my really impressive bio, right? It's like, oh my God, what school did you go to? Oh, life experience, soul journey, realizations and epiphanies along the way. Because I was just in my own world. But what really just helped me to get grounded and just really, really tap into what I would... No worries. No worries. What really just kind of like helped me to just tap into the kind of information I share now is spending a lot of time in the wilderness. I grew up going to like summer camps and just being all about, nature. But when I went off to college, I went into wilderness expedition leadership. And I was always just kind of like self-learned, go to libraries, learn things that just drew my interest that you wouldn't like learn in school. And I did enjoy some of the things I learned in school, but like tarot, astrology, the I Ching I practically memorized because I did so many readings on myself trying to like figure things out that my room was just like cluttered with hexagrams, and my mom's like, she got OCD, like what is this? And I'm just like, I pretty much memorized that book. And it just taught me so much about DNA and the fact that we're elemental and just the creative and the receptive, the masculine and feminine energies, and just really like cosmic and natural law and what we're truly made of. So, and that helped me also learn a lot about myself. Whistleblower testimony and research, of course, going to events like this, meeting a lot of different colleagues and friends that have brought out this information. Like I said, cosmic mythology, astrology, Keylontic science, and some of my information and the quotes that I have, you'll see come from that. Lisa Renee, energeticsynthesis.com. That's been close to my heart for this last decade. Her and I have become really good friends, and there's just everything in resonance about the stuff that she brings forth. And of course, Keylontic science being a greater language of a universal truth, and the freedom teachings that have been kind of lost to us is a real reminder of how we can get our sovereignty back and understand, the intruder races, but also our great human potential and what we're really made of, and how to overcome all these different things that like are trying to get in our way. So here's just a few bullet points about what I'll be sharing in this presentation and digging into further. And we charge things up with frequency, and it connects to our conscious or unconscious intent. Our belief systems have more power over us than we can imagine. And if it's not aligned with the truth frequency, if it's based in a program, it tends to not really work well with the body, especially in unprocessed trauma that hasn't been transformed or dealt with. So I go a lot into epigenetics and just how the power of our mind and our thoughts and the health of our emotions and our ability to do like the inner work can really change the nature of how we operate and what we align with. Because we're either going to align with Ascension organic signals or like artificial intelligence signals. And of course, all the different weaponry and different assaults being used on us are to try and link us into that. But I always say, if it was enough to just blast us with weapons, they wouldn't bother with the indoctrination and the programs. They really need to own the mind computer. They really need to sort of be able to engineer a subpersonality that's not authentic so that the weapons actually work. Once we step out of that and we claim our ability to free think and we raise our vibration above it, I feel like we de-weaponize it, we neutralize it, and we're able to release that foreign substance from our bodies, and we're able to heal in ways that we can't even imagine. We just have to get out of the personality matrix, move into the soul, and once we really start operating from that level, I feel we take all that weaponry down, which relies on us to just not be operating from our higher awareness and our greater wisdom. And so I'm going to focus a lot on the dark night of the soul, the plutonic energies. We're dealing with the Pluto returns. Last time this particular transit happened was in 1776. And it's a really, really powerful initiation. A lot of us already go through this initiation in our own lives, especially if you have a lot of Pluto energy in your chart. Or you're dealing with a major Pluto transit, we face this. We can die a lot of times and maintain the same physical body. But if we don't go through the transformation cycle, sometimes our physical body's just like, maybe I just can't continue in this lifetime, and we'll come back and pick up some of those patterns I might not have been able to work through, and keep going until that self-mastery is found and we can break this time loop cycle and move on to the next level. So however long it takes is however long it takes. So the reason I mentioned the root races and cloister races, because there's 7 root races since we ended up in this planetary system after Tara and Tiamat exploded, and we dropped down into harmonic universe 1, which is a whole nother deal with galactic history. And again, not everybody's going to see history in the same way. We've lived different lifetimes, there's different timelines, there's different dimensions, there's different experiences, but I really feel that this resonates, and the astrology to this day really shows this history, especially with the asteroid belt, the 3D asteroid belt from Maldek explosion and the 5D Tiamat asteroid belt, which is interesting when you look at the properties of all the asteroids, which there are a ton of, but some of the more main asteroids. But anyway, root races, cloister races are considered the starseed races. And so I find it interesting that 7 plus 5 is 12. 12 strands of DNA and beyond we can activate, 12 stargates. And then there's the 13th gate. and the significance of this and how it's lighting up in the here and now and in this particular phase is huge. So I'm going to get into that a little bit, and our DNA connection to all of this, and how, the war is won within. We're learning to switch on our dormant DNA, unscramble the fire codes, and really step into this alchemical marriage, this integration of polarity, and this union of the electric and magnetic, so that the weaponry that is using these very same forces are not hampering us. We're recognizing that we're the more advanced technology. There's no technology that can control us and limit us once we begin to just really realize that and remember. And it's the remembering that can be difficult. I know, right? I have to remind myself constantly. It's just like, get out of bed, everything's okay, take a deep breath. I know it's been like a pretty intense couple of years, right? Even if we knew this was coming, doesn't mean it's easy. So anyway, unity consciousness, of course, and medical astrology I focus on. And when I talk about unity consciousness, I'm talking about if there's 7 root races and 5 cloister races, and we all come in with different codes, different astro charts, we're really here to help switch each other on. That's why our diversity is such a blessing. And this is how we're rebuilding the architecture of our DNA. We all carry unique imprints and energy signatures and maps and different things that we're really here to integrate and share so that we can switch on what's dormant and what's unconscious without having to kind of convert one another to the way we think or live. We might have good ideas, we can be a resource, but this to me is how we are rebuilding, and this is why there's been a lot of genocides and holocausts and a lot of targeting of different races to make it very difficult. So certain root races were intentionally targeted to be wiped out, and of course stars, just people are targeted, the human race is targeted, so that we don't achieve this. And divide and conquer is one of the main strategies to pit us against each other, and all sorts of other tactics we all know about. And then the Galactic Zodiac is just very interesting because it helps us to understand this. As far as this year is concerned, some of the major aspects have been Pluto, Jupiter, and Mars-Saturn conjunction, and that was like a while back, right? And how these planets were kind of coming in and out of conjunction. So I'm not talking about something that's about to happen, but we're still just moving forward from the peak time, especially in 2019 when Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn had a conjunction. This represents the coronavirus crisis, the New World Order unfolding, and the paradigm shift. And so any predictions would rise from the qualities and properties of such a combination, which is wide-ranging as far as how we experience it as individuals. 2019 to now, as Jupiter has moved into Pisces, and Venus has also, and Saturn and Mars into Aquarius, then Jupiter, Neptune, and Venus in Pisces. Venus, of course, was in Aquarius too. I mean, without getting into just the planets and the signs, really seeing what's happening on a planetary alignment level, this conjunction in 2019 was like a major growth period for humanity to go through this massive initiation. And so, of course, they're amping up every possible way to divert us, distract us, and put us in fear so that instead of going through the Plutonic initiation, death, rebirth, alchemy, transformation, that we would fear death, we would censor our breath, and then be censored on social media, and all these things to hijack what's really available. So when we look at that hijacking, we might agree to it to a certain degree. We might understand, okay, not every false flag is completely false, but how can we use this adversity to empower ourselves instead of be victimized to it? And that is what a spiritual athlete and warrior does. In the face of adversity, we gain strength. We get pushed to the edge to reclaim our treasures. We don't let the adversity weaken us and make us small, even if we have to comply here and there, even if it makes sense to go along with some of it, because we are dealing with bioweapons and viruses, no doubt. So we have to take our time with it and find our space in it, and there's no right or wrong move, just as long as we remember the larger picture and where it can lead us. So whatever people's comfort level is to me where their truth lies, and it's very important that no matter how differently we see it, that we just grant each other as much love and respect as possible, because there's no reason for friendships and families to fall apart over this, just because we don't see eye to eye, because there's not one right truth about it, We have our own relationship to it. Just like we have our own relationship to our upbringings and how we reconcile it or heal from it or recover from it. And just as much as we're moving through this initiation, we're finding a certain comfort level, and we move at different speeds. And sometimes we learn the hard way. Sometimes we think, we won't be hurt or harmed. And I can tell you, so many people that didn't think that they would be touched by this have been absolutely compromised regardless of what choice they made. There's no right or wrong choice. I've seen both sides just deal with major ramifications. So the whole point is, let's take that adversity and grow from it and learn from each other and understand that our differences and our approach is a beautiful diversity that we can just kind of nurture together. So anyway, so yeah, everything kind of moving into Pisces, from Aquarius into Pisces. Now that we have so much energy in the Piscean stuff, especially with Neptune, the ruler, we have such access to our creative imagination. Where really, like, all the cosmic and earthly events are really helping us to locate that inner divine blueprint, to tap into the creative imagination. What are our dreams? What are our visions? What do we want to manifest? And then the grounding energies of Uranus and Taurus, even though Uranus is an electrical energy, knocking down the old to birth the new, it's in a square Saturn, a squared aspect with Saturn. So this tug of war with tyrannical control and our freedoms is what we're kind of up against. And it doesn't mean everybody's standing for that dark agenda just because we're exposed to all this, but there are certain dark players that have their hand in trying to manipulate something. But it doesn't mean like it's all this or black and white, right? So anyway, with the astrology, I don't want to maybe read this whole thing, but what this aspect, Saturn square Uranus, represents, it's going to be in the works till 2023, is kind of like freedom or slavery. But because we have to integrate this stuff, it's going to be a little bit of both, right? Sometimes we'll feel the limits or, certain limitations or rules that we don't want to, comply with, but it doesn't need to own us. If we focus on the Uranus part of it, which is about liberation and sovereignty, we can integrate the two so that we can enlighten Saturn and move to the higher octave of Saturn, which takes us out of the underbelly kind of shadow side of it, which is very dark. Connected to satanic stuff, connected to the dark cube in Saturn, connected to tyranny, control, enslavement, and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, because we win the war on consciousness within, we have to take that Saturn energy and the trials and tribulations it throws at us and find the self-mastery, because it rules the law of structure. So when we integrate the Uranus energy, we actually enlighten Saturn, and in a way, we're consciously helping to remove the rings, which astronomers have noticed the rings are dissolving, and also because Pluto's in Capricorn and the Pluto-Saturn conjunction with Jupiter, that something's happening. It's changing the Saturn-Moon matrix. We're also able to raise our vibration above the lower lunar energies of the moon, the artificial component of the moon, and the moon chain lineages, and all those influences that have created the distortions and imbalance in the patriarchal programs, and everything that's kind of kept the masculine and feminine out of whack within ourselves, with each other, in our brains, in the way we function, in the way our circulation and system flows with the planetary grid network and all that kind of stuff. So this is sort of a showdown of forces, but ultimately the showdown is in here. And it's kind of like, okay, can we maintain a certain level of sovereignty and free thinking in the face of all this? And be patient, because Saturn requires patience. It rules time. It moves at the speed of like hair growing and grass growing. If you sit there and look at it, it's like nothing's happening. But if you walk away and come back, it's like, oh my gosh, like I gotta mow the lawn, or maybe like let the grass grow, like why not? But whatever, it tests people's patience, right? Especially with Uranus, which is like super electrical. I clearly have a lot of Uranus energy in my throat chakra, like blah, 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 blah. But Uranus like moves so quickly. Our consciousness can move so quickly, and Saturn's like puts the pause button on. It's just like, we gotta integrate it into physical reality. It moves a lot slower than our consciousness does. But we don't need to let it mess with our heads too much or go into fear or give our power away. We just need to be patient, because we are rebuilding the tree of life, which means we have a root system with the earth, and we're switching on all these dormant strains of DNA, our galactic chakras, and the branches are open to just the cosmos, cosmic trinity, 0-point unified field. And that greater circulation is what is actually advancing us. And of course, there's forces out there, intruder races, that don't want that. But there's also our negative ego that doesn't want that. So we can't be victimized by these outside things. And we have to understand that they wouldn't have any power unless they stole that light or stole that life force. So we have to see where that dependency bond is still there and cut the cords. Doesn't mean that we can just like all of a sudden live off the grid or just be done with it. But when we can cut the cords, we can still interact with it without it stealing from us, siphoning them from us, and manipulating us. We can work with it and change it and inspire people and activate people and be a participant in introducing new concepts and ideas and shining a light on the things that need to go, so that that corruption can rise to the surface and be purged and held accountable for the crimes it's participating in against humanity. And so that the real doctors and teachers and nurses that really care about humanity can thrive and be supported and understood for the very challenging situation that they're being put in right now, and our children. So we have to just, yeah. So, yeah, all right. I kind of like a didgeridoo, like circular breathing, because there's only so much time, right, to do this. Anyway, so for the diamond sun 0-point unified field ether and the purifying energies of the aqua ray to be integrated and awoken within us, we have to contend with this metaphorical bad partner, the old Saturn. And I kind of look at it like an abusive partner or a narcissistic partner or a toxic relationship, whether it's a wife, a husband, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, doesn't matter what side. But it's about saying, wait a second, I want true love. I want to get out of this destructive relationship. There's betrayal, there's red flags, there's all these triggers, and there's a feeling that something's not right. So when we say, I want better, I want true love, and we cut those cords, then we really, fall into a deeper connection with Mother Earth and synchronicities and the divine magic and flow of the universe, and how it really, really works with us when we step up to a greater calling. Even if there's a time period where we don't feel like we know where the next meal is going to come from. And I'm really glad for living on the road and living the kind of lifestyle I had, especially raising 2 kids pretty much on my own with barely any money, living out of vehicles, and just being I am so screwed, and then being wait a second, changing my attitude, changing my perception, and being I'm abundant and I'm exactly where I need to be. And then miracles happen, the right synchronicities happen. I met the right people. I even manifested money out of the grass. And I'm not I can do that right now. It's why don't you try that right now? So wouldn't that be nice? And that's not grass. So, but, it's and in the wilderness stuff too, it's just perception was everything. The way the animals interact with you, the way, the group dynamic, works. If you stay hydrated, if you can manage your energy levels, it was all about having to be really in your center and really aware of your environment and really just conscious and in communion with everything in order to be able to listen to your higher guidance, in order to be able to listen to nature and spirit and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad I had that background, because when I talk about these sort of things, it's not just doesn't that sound nice? It's idealistic. I mean, I know that any of us has this ability, and I know a lot of us have been through so much. We know we're resourceful. We know we're abundant. It doesn't require the system that we were born into to determine that status or that success. We can have that all ripped away and prove it wrong and say, well, you know what, where I could go with all that. But anyway, so this diamond sun, it's in the core of the earth. This is something that has returned to the earth and hasn't been grounded on the earth for a long time. And the galactic history behind it is very vast, as far as the Baphomet energies, the Akamoth, and the Sophionic body, and what happened with the explosion of Tiamat, how that energy got harnessed by archonic forces, fallen angelics, and these, negative ET agendas that we hear about. I prefer to say alien because they are pretty alien, but at the same time, we do have a link with it. We have a relationship with everything. And in order for us to move to the higher octave of the reptilian energy, to ignite the benevolent sort of dragon energy in Kundalini, we have to reconcile with that part of our brain that has somehow become bound to the addiction matrix. And we're not just talking drugs and substances, just addiction that's coming from the theft in our hearts of feeling some kind of trauma that we can't put our finger on, the disconnect from the mother energy and not really understanding really what happened because we don't learn about it in school, the theft of true sacred union partnerships, the stuff that we've been bombarded with since childhood that creates all these conditions of depression, anxiety, and where starseeds are called ADD, HD. You could tell I'm probably one of those kids, just all these things that don't address the root cause. And how the medical industry just, really just, okay, something's wrong with you, you're depressed, here, take this drug. And even though we all might have faced that and been face to face with it, I know that depression, anger, and anxiety is a very healthy response to all the bullshit going on. And if we can just unconditionally love those parts of ourselves, it will reveal to us what our true mission is. When we can answer to it and give it the credit it deserves, it holds messages for us. Because it's the body, the way of saying, hey, you got to listen to this part of me. Don't medicate it. Don't put a Band-Aid on it. And so that didn't really work well growing up because my parents wanted to do everything. What do we do? Put her on, it's she's always and I'm no, if you don't want to listen, fine, but I don't want to shut it down. I don't want to lose that part of myself. And, just like everybody or anybody, not everybody, sometimes we do need that support and assistance just to function in the human realm for a temporary amount of time. But as long as we remember the larger picture, we know that it can't really own us or enslave us. It might just be helpful for the temporary. But if we could put our minds and hearts into a larger picture, we can really, deal with that deeper trauma and that confusion and the unconscious part of ourselves that are creating all sorts of discomfort in how we feel in the everyday. And that's why these greater conversations and transparency is so important. Instead of, feeling like we have to maintain a facade. And that's just something I can't do. And I know probably some of you see me on video sometimes like, is she okay? Probably not. But anyway, that's okay. I do my best. But I want to show up, and I just don't, really want to stop. But anyway, so this is just about the Uranus energy changing the nature of Saturn, and it breaks down that Saturn moon matrix so we can break that programming, deprogram from it, and the ancestral patterns connected with it, and really move to the next level. So because Saturn isn't made good without our willingness to do alchemy, we need to know that our salvation is taking on the task of becoming masters, not controllers, not victims of enslavement. We either are under the rulership of Saturn and we become the controller like Saturn, or we change the energy of Saturn, which is the willingness to be on the path of self-mastery, and it is where we can be the true guide. It clears our emotional waters so that we can connect to lunar forces that aren't so dominated by this dynamic, and we get our power back. There's higher octaves to the lunar energy, particularly Neptune, Uranus, and the outer planets, help us to go through the initiations that help us to break the artificial components of Saturn moon matrix type stuff, the Nephilim reversal grid, the Nibirian diodic crystal grid that has put things in reversals. We have to kind of die and be reborn to break that programming. So anyway, the power of our intuition and clear waters of clear psychic seeing is what happens when we heal the waters within ourselves. We move out the contamination. When we do that within ourselves, I feel like the earth responds to us, and that's sort of our way of helping to clear the skies of chemtrails, helping to clear the waters of pollution, helping to help regenerate the earth from degradation. That when we do that within ourselves, we are going to reflect an earth that is a higher earth energy as we switch on these dormant strains that connect to higher harmonic universes and higher earth energies. And if we can just all do that together, I feel like the earth responds to us, because we are elemental beings. We are replicas of the Gaia body, its circulatory system, but we have to overcome the archonic overlays that have been placed on the grid by doing the work to deprogram ourselves from the programs attached to it. Because again, there's social engineering components, there's harvesting, and of course all the underground things like pedophilia, human trafficking, and all the crimes we know about. I don't like to delve too much into it, we know enough, but this particular technology, the Nephilim reversal grid, is responsible to break apart hybrid genetics by reversing any synthesis of alchemy that happens organically between the male and female principle, electron-proton balance. So you can see the source of where I got that. So these dark technologies were put in specific places on the planetary grid network and sacred sites areas, like under Stonehenge, and basically, what it's really targeting is this integration of polarity, this alchemical marriage, and that's why there's so much divorce. That's why there's so much heartache. There's so much betrayal. There's so much that we're recovering from as far as trauma goes, and so we just have to do our best to show up as the best of ourselves, to just find integrity, to forgive ourselves, forgive each other, and know that it's not just because we're just a bunch of stupid humans. We have been targeted and compromised for thousands and thousands of years, so let's cut ourselves some slack, but not always blame it either. Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't me, it was the dark technology. I mean, we have to be responsible too. It's it's a really good way to get out of an argument, but but we have to just realize, we're not a victim to the things that cause us, unhealthiness. We have to kind of reverse those things, detox it from our body, change our habits, and it takes a lot of strength, especially because it's hard not to want to have vices, and it's good to learn how to replace maybe an unhealthy vice with a healthy vice. I'm certainly working real hard on that. Instead of grabbing the thing that's just going to maybe relieve the pain and discomfort, I grab something really, really healthy, and I'm going to just shoot some green food instead of vodka, Anyway, it's not like I've been drinking hard alcohol lately, so don't worry. So platonic solids, dodecahedron. dodecahedrons connected to the element ether, and the negative alien agenda and many of the Illuminati lines have misused these, and they appear as dodecahedron shapes. They are part of the reversal matrix used by service to self entities. When we activate the alchemy, we heal our DNA, and the fifth element is integrated, and the reversals are corrected. This comes about through sacred union and heals the grids. And I'm kind of like repeating myself, but the symbology of this, and this is very much Keylontic science information and things I learned from Lisa Renee, kind of put in my own words of what I've learned. It really represents the symbolism of the inverted pentagram, where the ether is going into the ground. So the corrections on a planetary grid network level are like the Sophionic corrections we hear about, if you guys have heard about that. It's lifting that star upright again so that the ether is bringing itself that flow of spirit energy, divine fire, water, and it's infusing the earth, air, fire, water, which are the other points of the stars, with this purification, this purifying energy. And this is happening on the planet. This isn't just like, oh yeah, that sounds nice, how do we do that? It's happening. As of 2010, the sun started to move through the 13th sign of Phaeacus, which is ruled by the ether, and the asteroid Chiron, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. So I already mentioned the higher Saturn, self-mastery, teacher, overcoming the trials and tribulations and satanic forces. Saturn's job is ultimately to strengthen us, similar to how resistance weight training builds muscle. We are in a spiritual boot camp here with the end goal of awakening to our true potential, understanding what is dormant and targeted, and rescuing those things like our junk DNA not being junk, and our galactic chakras, which are the energy centers we need to open. It brings in all sorts of, other things that is what miracles and magic and synchronicities and just all sorts of wonderful things are made of. Helps us to find our soulmates and soul family, and obviously all of us are connecting into it because here we are, and aren't we soul family? So yay for us. But that's kind of how I see these darker, elements. It's like, okay, it feels like the weight and pressure is being pushed on you. You push back, you're going to gain muscle, And if we allow it to make us stronger, if we allow it to kind of train us to overcome these obstacles and adversities, then it really has nothing on us. That's why when I look at weapons, even chemtrails, I say thank you for reminding me of how powerful we are. You're not a weapon. I'm not going to let you victimize me. I'm going to turn you into a tool for my growth and healing because you have no power over me. And the more I feel into that, the less I see us being attacked. And the more I feel like, I can face that adversity and that challenge and get to the other side so that maybe my consciousness can do something to help clear that. Because we have so much more of a connection with nature than we can imagine. And I noticed that a lot when I was in the wilderness, just perception and just the way things, would happen. And this sort of animal medicine that would show up, or the amazing things that you wouldn't even believe that you survived. It just kept reminding me, and I knew I wasn't out there to like all of a sudden lead a bunch of people out into the wilderness. I knew it had to do with preparation for just being able to speak on this stuff and really know, like, God, it was so proven to me that, and even just learning how to heal, just putting my hands on, and just talking to it. Okay, take me on a journey. What's the route? Why are you here? I know you have a message because you hurt. It's like you want attention like a screaming child, so this is an opportunity to give it unconditional love and understand it. Because I think we get so lost in diagnoses and labels of different diseases and ailments and afflictions that we almost like miss the mark of like the real message underneath it that can help us to unwind the distortion or the trauma or the energy signature that is causing us unwellness. And so I definitely have to remind myself of doing that, kind of like when I just feel like something's off. But okay, according to my research, the 13th blue ray was previously under the control of the Melchizedek hosting of our planet. They became fallen and patriarchal and were highly manipulated by the Orion group. Since the Sumerian Egypt invasion, the mother arc aqua blue ray was not in the earth core. Hence, so therefore, the earth had lost her mother of God and female Christ Sophionic body principle. That's from Lisa Renee. Psychic attack increases when we begin to switch on our galactic chakras. If this energy really wasn't on the planet, look at all the world wars. Look at all the things that have been set up to indoctrinate and groom children in the school systems, everything about like fake media, entertainment industries, and all these things we've been bombarded with. Doesn't mean that there isn't a positive side to it all, but there's obviously been an infiltration. And so not understanding this and this about our greater history, is very confusing for people. a lot of times people are like, oh, Christ is returning. And yeah, sure, Christ is returning. The Christ consciousness is returning. And however that's supposed to look is, I think, a very sacred and unique experience for each of us. I don't think anybody can define our relationship with Christ, and there's one answer to it all. But we have to remember that it's not just that Christ energy, it's the mother. And that has been so almost forgotten, and they've done everything under the sun to really kind of separate us from that and kind of demonize it or rewrite myths and history to create a really weird relationship with it. And in my workshop, I'm going to go so much more in depth. I got some really, really interesting things to share. This is just like a little bit of a sort of warm-up. But anyway, the neutron window in the galactic center is where omniversal cores connect simultaneously. The neutron window is what creates the 13th Stargate portal as 12 becomes the 1, and that process is what aligns us to our mother arc into Milky Way core 8D, which phase locks into the Andromeda core 9D. This phase locking between the universal cores opens a link between the 7 lower heavens and 7 higher heavens. So the reason I quote her is because she just really puts into words just things that I just already understand and just want to say. And this is what the Ascension window is the Milky Way galactic core and the Andromedan galactic core have merged. The Milky Way has been a fallen system. It broke away from the Andromedan galactic core, and we've been in this fallen system. So because it's a free will universe, we kind of fell, and we're getting back up. And it's symbolic of the inverted pentagram turning upright again. So I only have 10 minutes, but anyway, this is what it looks like. The 8th and 9th chakra, when it's activated, it's an infinity spiral, which is interesting because it's also the number 8, which in numerology rules Saturn. So that higher octave of Saturn, when we can move past the psychic attacks and all the things that don't want us to go in this direction, we recognize if you see level 2 down there, it's male-female balance is what really switches it on. So the psychic attack will come in the form of maybe targeting relationships, different things coming in from triggers, different false flags and psyops that they put out there to really pull us into a place of trauma and fear, to kind of sabotage our capacity to move beyond the 7th chakra. It doesn't mean that we're not still working with the other ones, but it changes the nature of how our chakras work, and they begin to change form, just like the 4th chakra begins to download the greater universal love energies from these higher dimensions, and it actually turns the green to a blue lotus. But it's questionable what maybe the colors of chakras are, so I don't like to create things that make it sound like, oh yeah, I'm it's important you experience it in your own way because that's going to be your truth. To me, the truth frequency is what makes you feel empowered, healthy, grounded, switched on, inspired, passionate, and willing to face the shadow stuff. To me, that's the truth. That's your truth. And nobody knows the truth better than you. But when it comes to these greater conversations, we can just put all this information together, connect dots together, be a part of this larger conversation, and have healthy debates, and and just kind of work with it and have fun with it. And we notice that sometimes that's not easy for certain people, and that's okay. So these are the energies of Ophiuchus. I don't have much time left. I'm going to get into it in the workshop. I'm going to go very in depth into a lot of things. But if you look at it, this phase is the solar alignment with the cosmic ether. So again, this ether energy, creatrix connectivity, pure transparent crystalline light, divine mother, the cleansing power of cosmic love, recoding the DNA, aligning to the cosmic heart, rebirthing, cleansing the blood, right? So we see a lot of people with blood issues right now. The whole, just not, yeah, I won't go into all that. So I'm going to just kind of jump. People are very familiar with this, the power versus force, David Hawking. So we have to understand in this human realm, we're not going to be able to escape dipping down into those lower energies, but can we catch ourselves and bring ourselves back up is the question. Because if we don't embrace the fact that we're going to dip down into guilt, grief, fear, anger, guilt, shame, or whatever, and we kind of judge it or are ashamed of it, I don't think we're getting anywhere because we can't force ourselves to be enlightened. So what I feel is that ether energy helps us to bring unconditional love into those dark spaces so that we can begin to shine light on it and give it the love that maybe it lacked. And that's why it falls into that place. Maybe there's self-love lacking that we're behind decisions we regret. Maybe somebody else didn't love us the way that we should have been loved, and we are wounded. So when we run into that, I feel like that's the alchemy. We can love it, unconditionally love it, be transparent about it, do whatever we can to shift it, and then we rise back up, and we're constantly working alchemy when we can do that, instead of, just be in a battle with ourselves, what's wrong with me? Why am I going to these negative zones? So you can tell this is like therapy for me, right? Like I'm like okay, yeah, okay, I'll remember that. So epigenetics, science is proving that our body's ability to heal and repair itself is greatly affected by our beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and intentions, for they have a profound vibrational effect upon our continually evolving genetic code. We're the programmers of the code. DNA activation is our software upgrade. So taking the time to just be strong in our intentions, and to just work on shielding and protecting ourselves, to have strong boundaries, is the everyday energy work we need to do. In my workshop, I'll go a bit more into just things about medical astrology and how, to me, the zodiac wheel is like a map that helps us to get into the 0 point so that we can learn from the patternings that we might keep looping in, so we can also see where the initiatory energies are helping us to rise above it, so that when these transits happen, we know what to work with, we know what's unique to us and what that patterning is, so that we can break the negative patterning and begin to appreciate the things that are pulling us into that 0 point unified field, so that we're not spinning in this time loop, because the zodiac is very much a wheel of necessity that soon won't be necessary anymore, and we're going to experience it a lot differently in higher dimensions, where the planetary configurations are going to be very different. So I'll go into this on the workshop, what some of these aspects have meant and how they try and invert it and twist it around. And that has very much to do with the South and North Node, which has to do with our soul growth as a humanity, also in our personal charts. And just when we're about to take a huge leap or go through a growth period, how they're trying to stunt that growth or hijack it. So anyway, this is just sort of a little example of some of the initiations. Uranus and Taurus, for example, is shock and upheaval that leads to great awakening. But when we're stuck in the shadow side of Uranus, very often we're plagued with panic attacks, constant PTSD, nervous breakdowns, and we lose our connection to higher guidance. But we all know nervous breakdowns, like the Tower card, can be very cleansing, and all of a sudden we have a breakdown, but then we have a breakthrough. If we can get to the awakening part of it and not get stuck in the, feeling of tragedy, because the Tower and the Uranus sometimes takes away that job or relationship, and it doesn't feel like it's in our control or it's beyond our control, and sometimes we resent it or think it's a misfortune, and we don't recognize it's actually upgrading us and taking us somewhere better. So it's helpful to understand these patternings and what's behind some of the events that take place in our life, so that our perception doesn't get lost and stuck needlessly. So Pluto has returned, and Pluto also rules things like pathogens and all the things that bother us when we can't move through the birth canal and get to the transformation part, the phoenix rising, the butterfly emerging. As long as we're kind of stuck in the birth canal and we're afraid of that emergence and that fear of death, that is when our immune system actually get more compromised and we're more subject to the things that are trying to lower our frequency and energy. Because again, it requires a certain level of social engineering. It requires owning a bit of our minds and our emotions in order for it to be successful. So, and again, we have to take what resonates and leave the rest. It's not all black or white or all evil and all good. It's a mixed bag, and we all experience it differently. As long as we just keep doing the work and raising our vibration, we raise that frequency and we're able to kind of like move into that greater ascension energy. But we also have to understand that this bifurcation, I don't see it as a total split. I see it like a bridge between the two, because there's a lot of people that are still going to be of service, that are still going to want to stick around and help people to overcome this shock and trauma of this level of betrayal, and these deeper layers that are really, really hard for some people to accept and wake up to. And I think we notice that with a lot of friends and family. We might run into it within ourselves when we see the depth and gravity of some of these crimes. But again, we're not victims. So I'll go into all this, the different levels of sacred marriage, and then I've been in contact with the senior advisor to the Earth Alliance, named Dan Cooper. I have about 80 screenshots and like 50 or more emails of a back and forth that we've been having. And he supports what Alex Collier and Elena Danone have said about MJ-12 signing the treaties behind Eisenhower's back. Eisenhower never signed the treaty with the Greys. So this sort of family curse, or like whatever, that with all this disinformation that I even spoke about, I'm like, well, maybe he did. But I'm like, I don't think that's the full story. And I finally have found enough evidence that, no, he never did sign it. But that's a lot for a family line or an individual to carry. And this is what they do. They blame it on somebody that would never have gone with it. So there was an unconditional surrender agreement that they don't want us to know about that happened in 1952. I'll be exposing information I've never exposed before in this workshop, connected with all of it. He said Eisenhower created Ike's Force, the UNC special section, to heal individuals and redirect them from the 20 and backs and their time as secret super soldiers in the secret space programs. He came up with this to help divert their attention, and out of Project Moonshadow particularly, and to create a benevolent secret super soldier program. And the White Hats and Earth Alliance, and his connection with Valthor and how that relates to the sphere beings, and the fact that they put a barrier around the Earth in 2014. So we hear some of that testimony from Corey Goods. Something kind of happened to that information, and I'll just leave it at that. There's some sort of compromise in some of that, but now I have a full enough picture to be able to explain what happened. And again, take what resonates and leave the rest, but this is such important information. The guy's not looking for any money, any fame. He's very much under the radar, and he gives me so much time. He answers every question. I'm like, do you want me to donate for your time? He's like, nope, I'm not allowed to accept any money for this. I'm totally here. And a lot of messages have come through Valthor to me, and I'm just saying, they're like, oh my gosh, just come and talk to me directly. But I understand, and it's like, I know they're there, but there's some really awesome and reassuring communications that I'll be sharing for the first time on Sunday at 2 o'clock at my workshop. So this was just a little bit of a warm-up. Sorry I talk so fast, but anyway, my website's cosmicgaia.org. You can keep up with the events I'm doing and the subscriptions that I have. I have Zoom events to really build community to help people in these times so that we can all just share what we're going through. I do mini readings, and I have a weekly show, and it's going to be one subscription that you'll get like a whole bunch of cool things. And your support means everything, because I wouldn't be able to do this without your support. So thank you for coming, and accept that I probably will never talk slow, if that's okay.